There we go. Whew. Wait. So fast the Facebook angle. I think it's good. Good. All right.
No, it's not.
No?
Wait. It's delayed, so I can't see the food.
You can't see the
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna go a little bit lower. I don't know, it's delayed.
Huh?
It's delayed. So I'm waiting for the part where you adjust it.
It's good. Deandra says it's good. But it's tall. Lower it a bit.
No, but you hadn't lowered it when she said that.
Oh. How's it now?
No, she's not.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Sorry. Always technically challenged. This helps. What time we got? We got 5 people. Hey, Pat. Hey, Julia's watching. Barb and Craig. All my people in the house. Literally. God, you should see Sophia's face. You ever seen a grouchy 18-year-old does not want to be hanging out with her dad on a Saturday night? Come around, say hi, Soph. She'll come say hi later. Here we are. Thanks for coming. We are starting up the Aperitivo Reading Hour series again tonight with some good news to share. I'm not really having as much of an aperitivo as I'm having a bowl of loudmouth soup, which is a euphemism for a martini. It's thematically related to tonight's reading, as you shall see. Tonight's reading itself, before I start talking about it, I hope you all doing well. Here we are again. We began this series in March. We are now in August. And, you know, I'm surviving. I hope you guys are surviving. I hope you're all optimistic, like I am, that this will be over at some point relatively soon, and we can go on to our lives. In the meantime, I'm still thrilled to see you here. Every once in a while, I'm thinking to myself that as long as we're still sort of in some sort of a quasi lockdown, I'll do one of these once a month. So, excited?
I won't be here.
Oh, right, So's going off to school. I had to have JJ help me. Hey, buddy.
You should practice.
Huh?
You should practice.
He's not home right now. And so, my well wishes to you, of course. Happy birthday this week to my dear cousin, Amy Fairchild, and today is also the birthday of Betty McKenzie, who is my buddy Kevin's mother-in-law, my friend April's mother. Happy birthday, Betty. I hope, if you're watching, that you're doing well. So tonight we are here for what I consider to be a really good reason. I have a new novel coming out this December, is the official release date. There is a link to pre-order, which I'll put up, I'll share tomorrow. The novel is called Black Irish Blues, and it's a sequel to my second novel. This will be my fourth. It is a sequel to my second, which is a noir called Aperitivo Blues, a Brooklyn Mystery, which I've read a couple times during this series earlier. I love the character of Caesar Styles. I like his voice a lot. It's sort of gritty and poetic, and you know, someone who I really liked. I didn't want to stop writing about, so you know, I needed to sort of do a sequel with him. I have the third installment in mind. If this one does reasonably well, at least enough to warrant a third episode in this sequence. The novel itself, Black Irish Blues, Aperitivo Blues, took place in Brooklyn. It was where our protagonist had run away from home, come back. To help sort of solve a family curse, a Sicilian family curse. And he ends up immersed in a mystery in Brooklyn, becomes an unlikely detective, solves the mystery, also sort of gets revenge on his really, really bad big brother, who he ends up sort of tricking back into prison. After that point, he feels like he can leave Brooklyn and return to his hometown in northern New Jersey, I say Jersey? So don't care. Northern New Jersey, to buy the town's only inn, the tavern in town, and sort of hopefully redeem his family's name and their family curse, right? This is noir. You get to have curses and stuff, right? The book itself is very similar in structure and tone, etc., etc. It takes place in a fictionalized version of my hometown of Glen Rock, New Jersey. Now, it's not technically my hometown. I moved away from there when I was 12 years old. But it remained my hometown because I spent so much really valuable time growing up in this town. I grew up there in the 70s, and I really loved the town. My dearest friends are from there. I dedicate the book to the town itself, and in particular to the families Mangini, Ferrari, and O'Shea. And there are lots of things in the book that people who are from Glen Rock will recognize as familiar, though please understand that that's what writers do. You know, I'm taking people that I might place in that situation, and I fictionalize them, but it'll be a sort of fun sort of, oh, I remember that, or I know that place, etc. Starting with my own neighborhood, and then the Glen Rock Inn, etc. So there's that. Not to spend too much time dwelling on Glen Rock in context. The book itself, of course, has lots of drinking and eating in it. The main character, Caesar Stiles, is a chef, a cook, right? And he owns the town's inn. He makes lots of food throughout the story, but one in particular is a pasta dish called bucatini alla amatriciana. I know it's hard to say, right? Bucatini is the name of the pasta. It means pasta with a little hole. Buca is mouth, tini, small bucatini. Amatriciana. Amatrici is the town in Italy you might have remember hearing about in the news a couple of summers ago that was devastated by an earthquake. Right? It's in the hills, I guess that'd be east of Rome, in the Apennine Mountains, which are just massive mountain range, where they had a severe earthquake and destroyed this entire town. It's trouble. I've been there. And they're very famous for this pasta dish. So the pasta dish appears in the book. It's a classic Roman dish like carbonara. Remember I made carbonara a couple weeks ago for you guys, or about a month ago? This is among the big three Roman pasta dishes: carbonara, cacio e pepe, and amatriciana. Amatriciana. Bucatini. Amatriciana. You want to try it? Soph?
I don't think I could do that.
She's not playing. I don't think she'd try it on a good night. But I'm gonna make it for you. And the issue with making pasta live on this kind of pasta is I gotta start now, then I'll read, and I'll keep going back and forth between reading passages and this. We'll be done in about 30 minutes. So if you can stick with me, enjoy your cocktail. If you wanna share what you're having on the screen here, your comments, I go back and read them later for sure. I'm gonna get started though. I'm gonna turn my pasta on. All my ingredients are prepared ahead of time, right? This is how cooks do things right. This is your best chance to not blow what you're cooking is to have all your stuff in place before you begin. Mise en place, as the French say. I have my guanciale. Right? This is cured hog jowl, right? You'll see in the store when I read about this, they use pancetta. You can use pancetta, right? I didn't use pancetta in the story because the story takes place in the early 90s. They didn't have guanciale in America in the early 90s. If I had guanciale in the story, somebody read it, they don't have guanciale in America yet. Okay, so I was staying true to what was potential, but guanciale is what you want to use, right? Mila's calling yourself. It is,
No!
just this way.
Oh no.
Okay.
I think the line's still on.
Okay.
Wait, no. Okay, we're back.
Okay.
My
What's
freckles
Sophie's
look good.
friends call her. Tell your friends not to call when I'm on TV, when I'm on Insta
I
Live.
don't understand.
I have guanciale, right? This is the jowl of how it makes the best base of a sauce because there's so much fat in it, right? It's got so much fat and beautiful streak of meat too. Now, I've talked about cheek before. Cheek's a delicacy, right? So this is the cheek of a hog that you can get online or at your local alimentari or groceria, etc. Right? This is from America, actually. This is made by a producer in Virginia, who I hope to be writing about soon. You take your sauce starts with guanciale. I got a hot pan here. Just a little bit of oil, right? So this is stick at first and burn. I'm gonna get it in there. What I'm going to do now is render it down, right? Render it, slow release of the fats, right? It's crucial for cooking. And my objective here is not to let this burn. I just want to slowly sort of melt, would be a good way to look at it, okay? So I'm going to let this is step one. We're going to let this render. I can hear it, that it's working at the right heat. Right? And have a sip of martini. Which is a great segue towards the 2 martini rule, which is part of the story. Right? So Black Irish Blues, right? It's a return to origin story. Our protagonist has returned to his hometown looking for redemption. We'll see how things get complicated right here. Prologue. The trouble with Dinny To It began with the 2 martini rule. It was an axiom of sorts about drinking and limits, shared often by my mother, that I thought to share with Dinny To It, who was sitting on 2 martinis, thinking about a third. He'd come into my barroom on an autumn afternoon. The plantation shades were slanted over the wide windows that faced the west, and the fuzzy sunshine slatted the planks to fill the dark room with diffuse light. Dinny ordered a straight-up, bone-dry, Stoli martini, no olives. He had a way of speaking I couldn't make. Slick, but mannered, unusual, like his name. That's too high. He kept his money on the bar in a chrome clip and wore a sharp suit, tailored to his lithe frame. He was young, about my age, late 20s, but all grown up. Troubled actor handsome, a dimple in his chin and an active Adam's apple. A head of flowing black hair and green eyes. They called his type Black Irish back when I was a kid, back when there were a lot more Irish descendants in this town. And though I hadn't been around in a dozen years or so, I knew he wasn't from around here at all. Not from the first generation Irish or Italians who raised their kids in the trappings of 1970s lower middle class suburbia. Catholic schools and police athletic leagues and CYO and 2 weeks off every summer at the Jersey Shore or someplace upstate, at least for some. It wasn't like that for me and mine at all. Our family was a disaster. I was the youngest son of no good Timothy Stiles and his tragic Italian wife, refugees, both from the Bronx and victims of a cursed ancestry. They had 3 boys, 2 dead now, with the last, me, responsible in some way for the respective deaths of both brothers. And I'd run away from this town at the age of 15 because of the first and good brother dying, and I was back and free all these years later because of the very recent death of the other one, which didn't bother me at all. I'd spent the years away rambling around America, hopping trains and hitching rides, cooking or tending bar or building houses, never in one place for too long, except the years just spent in Brooklyn, close enough to home in northern New Jersey, but not too close, until it was safe to move back into the abandoned house I'd grown up in and buy my hometown's only inn to refurbish and redeem and make my own and hopefully end my family's curse. I bought the place in the spring and shut it down as the heat arrived, spending the summer sweating through my clothes in the undertaking of a massive gutting and rehab that turned a forever dingy watering hole with crap food and the ancient stench of broken drunks, including my own father, into a respectable establishment with plenty of light, a welcoming atmosphere, and damn good things to eat. We reopened a few weeks after Labor Day, and I dedicated most of my time to operations in the kitchen. I left the bar to the old schooler who'd worked there since nearly before I was born, 28 years earlier. Richie, the bartender, after his first summer off since quitting high school at age 16, had enjoyed his long days reading Raymond Chandler novels and lounging around his cottage by Greenwood Lake, just across the border into New York State. He talked about not coming back to work at all after feeling his body recover from 40 years standing behind a bar, first in his native Bronx and then here. Richie agreed to stay on for shortened hours, a no-smoking rule anywhere within the premises, and 2 nights off a week, and whatever he wanted from my new menu, whether he was working or not. The afternoon that I met Dinny To It, Richie was on the schedule to tend, and he sat at the end of the bar in the natural light, immersed in the savory aroma and mopping up the sauce of the chicken dish he'd ordered for the second evening in a row. Brined thighs, broiled and covered in a sauce bright with lemon, olive oil, garlic, and oregano. Richie was the only one in the joint, besides Dinny To It, who was sitting on 2 martinis thinking about a third. You know what my mother used to say about martinis? I asked him. He set his green eyes on me, and they pulsed for a beat before he decided to engage the tall stranger behind the bar in a white t-shirt with lank brown hair pulled into a ponytail, and a large German knife paused from Dyson fruit. We locked eyes until a smile creased his face, and he spoke in a bemused tone. No, tell me, he said, what'd your mother used to say about martinis? I put the knife down, wiped my hands, and leaned into the bar, toward the man who needed to know the 2 martini rule. They're like boobs, I said. 1's not enough, but 3 are too many. His face went to work registering the comment, squints and smirks and tilts to both sides as he tried to figure if he'd been insulted or enlightened. It was like waiting for a slot machine to reveal its outcome, and I could tell this guy had a lot of potential outcomes, coiled and complex beneath the preternatural ease. He sniffed and straightened on his stool, and I sensed an insult forming, possibly one that involved my mother, and that would be bad. Richie cleared his throat and made some music with his silverware and plate. Dinny Tuitt looked down at him and nodded before setting his eyes back on me, just as I spun the big knife handle 3 times around my palm and buried the blade into a wooden cutting board. The 5:45 commuter train rolled into the station with a loud blast of its horn. Know how to use a knife? He asked once the silence returned. I do, I said. Cut some people? He asked. I have. He nodded and breathed through his nose, looked down at Richie and then back at me. Check Facebook, Sophia, make sure it's working.
I am.
Okay. And where are you from? I asked. South Philly, he answered. I removed the tip of the blade from the cutting board, checked for damage. Dinny Tuitt cleared his throat. You're the guy they've been talking about, he said. The runaway who came back and fixed his place up. I am, I said. Did a nice job. Thanks. Why? Why what? Why would you want to come back here, he asked. This town sucks. You don't say. He polished off his drink and put the glass in front of me. I put it to the side. Dinny Tuitt sucked his teeth and stood to leave. Your mother, he said, with a rule about martinis. She's dead, right? Yeah, I said, feeling the sear of clever cruelty and the ache of sorrow. Thought so, he said. Dinny Tuitt pulled a Marlboro Light cigarette from the inside of his suit jacket, banged the filter thrice on the bar, then tucked it between 2 long fingers. I waited for a match to appear before having to inform him that the smoker was no longer allowed anywhere on the premises, though I gathered he knew that already by the way he checked with Richie before eyeballing me until his face softened and the intensity in his eyes receded. He slipped the smoke behind his ear, pulled the crisp 20 from his clip, and dropped it down on a $14 tab. Sorry about your mother, he said, straight up. I watched him glide out the door. Richie took his plate to the kitchen and came behind the bar, tying his signature red apron over the rounded midriff of his white dress shirt over black slacks. The downy white hair still left on his head, slicked back above his ears. And what's his story, I asked. Good question, Richie said with a huff, the hard scrabble of the Bronx still present in his throat. Name's Dinny Tuitt, married to one of the Donaghy girls. I remember the Donaghy girls, 4 blondes, each 2 years apart, with smiling eyes and easy laughs. The kind of girls that owned every room they were in. The kind of girls made for cheerleader outfits and wedding dresses, stars of high school yearbooks. The kind of girls that made all kinds of boys do stupid shit. Which one he marry, I asked. The one with shit-tasting men, Richie said. He come in a lot? On occasion, always about this time, catches a decent buzz and splits it for the regular show. He trouble? Not really. It's just that he don't, fit in, that's all. Black Irish, I said. Don't see very much of them anymore. More black than Irish, Richie said with another huff. What's that mean? You'll see, he said and started racking glasses. I looked at the spot where Dinny Tuitt had sat and tried to make sense of what Richie just said. All I knew was that I didn't like it. Not the casual racism, nor the caustic implication. But Richie was right about one thing. I'd be finding out about Dinny Tuitt, though I'd never see him in my bar again. That's the end of the prologue. Let me check on my guanciale. Let's render in. Pasta's boiling. Hold off on that. So the guanciale, the fat parts have become translucent. They're basically, you can see through them almost, right? What's this keep saying on thing here?
It's working on here.
Okay. It's rendering down. There's a liquid, you know, just starting to fill the bottom of this pan. In the bottom of this pan with this liquid, I'm going to turn the heat up a tiny little bit. I'm going to add some red onion. So we started with the guanciale, right? We rendered it down. It was about 10 minutes, I guess. Okay. So it becomes translucent, and the meat part, right, gets browned. Okay? I'm going to add some red onion. I slice it as thin as I could possibly slice it. It's going to caramelize in the fat that came from the guanciale. Stir it up a little bit. All right. Increase my heat just a little bit. I'm looking for a little more heat on this now. So I want the onions to caramelize. So I'm going to release a little more fat, right? And let this last piece of guanciale, and let this caramelize the onions. Then I got to read some more heat.
Oh shoot.
What's the matter?
My computer's gonna die. I'm gonna get the charger.
What?
My computer's gonna die. I'm gonna have to charge it.
All right, back to the reading. Okay, so that's the setup, right? I love prologues. I mean, I think they're a great way to establish a sense of dramatic tension and give us an idea that, you know, there's things about to happen in this story, as opposed to being like, you know, so and so woke up, right? You know, so and so woke up and began their day, and blah blah blah. I like getting the idea that there's things about to go down. Right? Especially in narratives that involve, you know, some sort of sense of real tension involving, like, you know, events, noirish, you know, plot, you know, mystery, etc. That was not well said. I got 2 of these to drink, so I really got to keep. Funny anecdote about the 2 martini rule. I say, and I will defend this to the end of my life, that my mother invented this, or my own mother did. And I think that she did it by accident, right? I think that it was actually originally 2 boots, right? You know, 1 for each foot, right? And she misheard it as boobs and then ran with it. And I'm the one who said to her, "Are you sure this is that?" And she's like, "You know what? Whatever. This is more fun." I think it's a great anecdote about my mom and her sense of fun. Okay, so we got the pasta rendering. This is boiling. I boiled it too early. It's okay. This is cooking down. I'm going to read you the first chapter, which helps set off some events that are really important to the plot. Very short, to the point chapter. Chapter 1. I'd only been home for a few days when a visitor from the local police department found me on the roof. The house had been in neglect for years. The years since my father ran off and my good brother died, followed by my escape into America and my awful brother going to jail. My mother had been alone all that time. The last few months dying in the house she could never make a home, despite her goodwill and intentions. I'd come back from my travels when she told me she was sick, but there was nothing I could do but sit with her and offer comfort. When she died, I buried her alone, but I couldn't stay in the house yet, not with so many memories and ghosts, so I boarded up the house and went to find a home in the mysteries of Brooklyn, the place where my family's history in America began. After more than a year in Brooklyn and a week as an amateur and somehow successful detective, I realized the borough of Kings would never be my home. A fortuitous real estate deal on the dawn of Brooklyn's gentrification filled my pockets, and a dangerous and bloody gamble got my baleful brother back in jail for what was to be many, many years. So I finally felt comfortable returning to the now abandoned house where I'd grown up. I'd kept the grounds in decent shape while caring for my mother and on occasional visits out from the city, but the interior and exterior needed care, particularly a leak in the roof that emptied into the front vestibule. Second to last house on a dead end, it was a 2-story A-frame, brick around the base and aluminum siding on top. Non-distinct in a very suburban manner. Built not to impress, but to draw at a reasonable price middle-class white folk from the city in the 70s. Driveway down one side, patch of grass out front, and a big lot in back that ran towards the dirt road and gully behind, with fields and hills and a cookie factory beyond that billowed sugary smoke into the open sky. From the roof, over the oaks that lined the streets, you could see the Manhattan skyline in the distance and the immediate ramparts that fortress, the small neighborhood of similar houses. The dirt road behind, the electrical plant to the side, and the train tracks that sequestered the neighborhood's far side and gave it the ignominious name, the other side of the tracks. I grew up with that stigma, along with a crew of derelicts and misfits and rebels, sons of mostly deadbeat dads and desperate moms who spanned the generation of 1970s suburban anti-pastoral. None of us gave a shit about the neighborhood's bad name. In fact, it was a badge of honor for most of us. Better than being some mama's boy or a rich kid from the other side of town, though I imagine those loved and cared for found themselves far more secure in adulthood than those of us who walked through childhood and into adolescence with a chip on our shoulder and a steady sense of being less. As I sat on my roof, taking a break from patching the leak, I wondered about my childhood pack. My mother, through her frequent letters, had occasionally offered updates. So-and-so went to jail. This one joined the army. That one threw himself off the George Washington Bridge. It was rarely good news. I didn't really care about any of them too much, except Mike McBride. We were the same age, born a couple days apart, and of the same ilk, just preternaturally in sync with each other. And despite the acrimony between our respective families, his being of the more upstanding variety, hardly a day went by in my entire childhood and adolescence that we weren't together. We even lost our virginity on the same day, the summer we turned 14, as a fortuitous pool-hopping excursion on the good side of town led us into the backyard of 2 older, bored girls in bathing suits. I hadn't been in touch with Mike at all since I'd run away. Writing letters to friends was not normal back then, or at least not for us, and I knew his mother would hang up on me if I ever called their house. So I'd only imagine what my old friend was up to, until my mother told me that he'd moved out west and joined the Los Angeles Police Department. I wish she'd told me earlier. I could have found him during my travels. None of the other neighborhood kids were around either, at least as far as I could tell, and the neighborhood had clearly upgraded, with 2 shiny cars in most driveways and updated facades on the homes, well-kept lawns and very little noise. There were kids, but they played in the backyards as opposed to up front in the street. I was trying to put old names with rooftops when I saw the cop car enter the neighborhood through its only entrance, catty corner from my house in the far reaches. The small neighborhood had only one way in or out and 3 unofficial blocks: big block, middle block, little block. A car could run straight on the straight block, parallel to the railroad tracks, past a dozen houses, past the middle block to where the entry street teed out, and take a right on the little block, past Mike's house, halfway down 6 houses on either side to the very bottom of the big block and my house, second from the dead end, from where you'd go right, past the bottom end of the middle block and swoop up to the spot where you entered. It wasn't an exact circle, more like a ladle, but that's how it functioned. The cop car that took that route just described, parallel to the tracks, banging a right on Mike's block and traveling slowly under a canopy of oak trees that had grown so much since I'd left, directly to my house where it parked in front. A young man with a crew cut and freckles stepped out of the car in a crisp navy uniform, shiny badge, and full arsenal on his belt. He held a hat ceremoniously under his left arm as he approached my front door. He blinked and breathed and rang the buzzer. I raised from the roof, sweat released in streams down my shirtless back with my ponytail sticking to my spine. I envied the kid's crew cut. "Help you?" I asked. The young man looked around, startled before finding me looming over the gutters above the front door. "Afternoon, sir," he said in an officious tone. He looked fresh out of college, and just so fresh in general that any seriousness of his uniform and demeanor was undermined as he squinted up at me with the sun directly overhead. I assumed he was in the wrong place. "Are you Mr. Caesar Stiles?" he asked. I nodded, now curious. The sun slapped across my shoulders. Could I ask you to come down from the roof, sir? What for? I have an important matter to discuss with you, sir. Define important. I was sent directly by order of Sergeant McBride. My heart flopped over once and my knees gave a little. I squatted down so as not to stagger off the roof. Mike McBride? Yes, sir. Sergeant Michael McBride sent me to see you, sir. He would have come himself, but he's at a law enforcement conference in Baltimore. Wait a minute, I said. Mike McBride is a sergeant of this town's police department? Well, sir, he's a sergeant, not the sergeant. Since when? I asked, way more interested in the presence of my friend than any serious matter at hand. I thought he was in L.A. He returned from Los Angeles a year ago, sir. Why? I'm not aware of that. I pointed up the street. Does he live in the house where he grew up? That, sir, I do not know. What I do know is that he asked me personally to discuss a very serious matter with you. And what's that matter? It involves your brother, sir, Salvatore Stiles. What about him, I asked. I'd risked my life to get my thick and vicious brother back in jail, and now I feared he'd found a way out again, which would probably mean the death of me. My mouth went hot and dry. The young officer secured his hat under his arm, straightened his already straight posture. He looked dead into the sun and spoke with formality, as if rehearsed. Sir, I'm sorry to inform you that your brother, Salvatore Stiles, has died as of yesterday at Northern State Prison. I didn't believe it, though I believed it. I kind of always thought of Sally as tough to kill, if not impossible. How? I asked. How'd he die? Multiple stab wounds, sir. Someone stabbed him? Someone, sir, he said. He was jumped by a group of men, apparently. One of them also was killed in the exchange. That made sense to me. I couldn't imagine Sally going down easy. He'd almost managed to kill me a few weeks before with 2 very large cops all over him. Not a shred of remorse pulsed through me. He brutalized my life. He ran off my father and made my mother sick with worry. I hated his guts and I was glad he was dead. A burden felt lifted and life seemed new. That's how I thought about it at the time. But it would turn out that my malevolent brother could still cause me pain and put me in danger even from the grave. We've got the plot setting up here, right? The issue with Sally and the issue with Dinian to it. I got the pasta to keep cooking. This is rendering down nicely. The onions are caramelizing in the fat. If you can hear that sizzle when I stir it, it's absorbing some more of the fat from the guanciale. What I'm going to do now is turn the heat up a little bit, get my pasta in, okay, and add some tomatoes. Right, so we got all this salt and fat, right, from the tomatoes. We have sweetness from the caramelized onions. And we're going to get now from tomatoes is some acid, right? You know, that balance of all the different flavor points, you know, is what makes, you know, food that tastes really good. That's why we don't know that when we're eating it, but that's what makes many things complex and satisfying. This being one of them. I have tomatoes that are imported from Italy, right? They were whole tomatoes. I put them in a bowl and mushed them with my hands. I'm putting it right in the thing and not getting on my shirt. Right? I turned the heat up because all these, you know, room temperature tomatoes are going to bring the temperature down in the pan. So I got them in there. Right? Incorporate. These tomatoes are full of water, of course, right? We're going to render this sauce down into it could be like the consistency of like oatmeal, right? It's going to be about 10 minutes, just about right about time for my next passage. That's also right about right about a time. Thank you. Getting pasta in. So I'm going to get my pasta in as well. I do add some sugar to my pasta sauce, right? To my tomato sauce. It does help break down, especially when I'm doing a quick sauce like this one. If this is a slower one, I'm cooking for hours and hours, I wouldn't use sugar. But this is going to cook quickly, and I want to get some of that bitterness out of it. So sugar helps immensely with that. I'm looking for a simmer now, right? That thing I referred to last time is like a smile on top of this, just a slow simmer. I got my heat, I think, in the right place. I'm going to add some fresh basil, right? Those basil, picked from our garden out back. right? To get some herbaceousness into this. I'm going to save some of the basil for the end to finish with. I'm going to use salt, of course, and some red pepper flakes. Oh yeah, that's hot. You see? Let's try that again. So, you see?
I'm trying to.
Say yes.
Well, it hasn't picked up. You haven't picked it up yet.
What do you mean?
In the
Oh.
video. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm starting the basil, so it incorporates, right? We love basil. My nose grows like crazy, but it's so good. Of course, what you are not experiencing now, what Sophie and I are, is the smell here. I smell rendered pork, sweet onions, basil, tomato. Sauce is going to cook down. I'm going to add.
Scott Watson said, "Is there a cure for garlic breath?"
No.
And then he's ordering Domino's, and that he wants his Jordans back.
Okay. I'm going to salt my pasta water, and look, when you're salting your pasta water, you're making it like the ocean, right? Do not be shy on the salt. You want to really be aggressive with it.
Jeez.
Okay, fix it. Okay. I got my bucatini, right? This bucatini is going to cook for it says on the package 10 minutes al dente. I want it short of that. So I'm going to actually set a timer here so I don't get distracted. Got a pound of bucatini going into all this water. I'm going to make sure it gets submerged. I lost a lot of my water when I was reading. It's okay. Down, boy. Good. That's still plenty of water. I'm going to set a timer. Let that boil, get up to a boil again. 8 minutes. Reason for that is I'm going to finish this pasta in this sauce. It's all is going to happen when I'm reading to you in 1 minute. Reading and cooking at the same time is harder than I thought it was going to be. I'm doing okay. I doing okay, so? You sure?
Your time wise?
No, I mean is this, am I pulling this off?
I mean, what do you mean?
Never.
Like the food?
Is the presentation working here? I'm cooking at the same time as I'm reading. Is it working?
I think so.
Yeah, thanks.
I think so.
Me too. Hot wines a little bit too. We got some beautiful Chianti Classicos to share. Okay. I think I need a cooking, reading show. So, you in? If you could see this face on this kid, I'm going to impersonate your face.
No, I look cuter.
Yeah,
There's more sass to mine. Yours just looks sad.
Yours looks like.
Exactly.
Come say hi. All right, come on, let's bring Sophie out, folks. She's the star of the show. She's grumpy because she's going out tonight, and I'm interfering in her night. So, say hi, everybody.
Hello.
Everybody say hi to Soph. Look, she's at the beach all day, and she's going out tonight, and I'm here in this house all day long, and then she's met me. I don't get it.
Hello.
She's fine. Pasta's boiling. Woo! I'm gonna give it a quick stir. Make sure all the noodles are separating. Lower the heat on this so I can trust that they're not gonna over-reduce. Perfect. Let's do this. This is a chapter where the bucatini is made. That's what I'm sharing with you. It's juxtaposed to a previous scene where our Caesar is looking for Dinny to it. Right? Basically, what happens in a nutshell is that there's people that Sally, the older brother, have betrayed. That's how he got out of prison in the first place. And those people are looking who killed him when he got back. But they're also after reparations, and they want Caesar to sort of compensate them for the problems that Sally had caused them. In order to sort of even have any attempt at doing that, Caesar gets lured into trying to find Dinny to it and goes missing. There's a big someone, his father-in-law is willing to pay quite a bit of money if they could find this guy. So Caesar is a mercenary, and in the journey to try and find Dinny, Caesar ends up in a brothel where he is almost killed. Right? He is lured into a bedroom quite easily, and then trapped by people who are also looking for Dinny to it, and they're going to kill him. Right? They have a shotgun. They have all these devices of torture. He is saved by one of the characters that he goes on his journey with, but has his hand completely destroyed in the process. They pounded his hand flat with a sledgehammer. So he's returning from the hospital back to the inn on a regular night, and he discovers this. After some emergency room treatment that ended in a plaster cast from my knuckles to my elbow, a local cab company dropped me off behind the inn. And I slipped up the back stairs to the office for a quick shower and a change of clothes. A need to join the bustle below hastened my first attempts at life minus one appendage. I undressed, showered, and dressed, then ambled into the crowded inn to find Richie as stressed as I'd ever seen him. "The hell have you been?" he asked in a tone that hinted at confidentiality until he noticed my condition. "Jesus fucking Christ," he said. "What happened to your hand, guy?" "Slammed it in the door," I said. He didn't believe me, but made like he did. "Listen," he said, "we're slammed here. Place is a madhouse. There's all sorts of rumors around town about Dinny Tuitt not being dead, but gone missing. Your pal, Mike McBride, was in here 4 times and called just as many. Fuck is going on?" "Long story," I said, ignoring the stares from bar patrons on my way to the kitchen, not sure how much help I could be with one good hand. "And oh," Richie called, "some kid, claims to be your nephew, is in the dining room. Been waiting on you for, I don't know, about 3 hours now." I turned around and Richie held up his hands to the sides, exasperated by a suddenly unreliable employer. I nodded in contrition and beelined through the waitress station that co-joined the 2 rooms. It was crowded. Waitresses and busboys in a concert of ordering and delivering and clearing. Checks being paid. It was the kind of scene a restaurant owner should love, but none of it mattered in that moment. I searched the room, nearly frantic, until there he was, all alone in a booth by the frosted street side window, a kid in a gray t-shirt in front of a half-finished root beer float. His hair was short and thick and brown, pushed up from his forehead in a small smack of defiance. "And how are you, Charlie?" I asked, the words bouncing around my mouth as they were spoken. He looked up, and I about died. There was a space between his front teeth and some red fern in his rosy cheeks and green eyes, but his mother was right. This kid was a Styles. The jawline and hairline and aquiline nose. He was tall for his age and narrower in the shoulders and skinny in the arms like me and Angie were at 11 years old, but his frame was sure to bloom in the coming years. Curiosity bounced around his face and eyes as he blinked and fumbled for something to say until noticing my cast. "What happened to your hand?" he asked with great concern for a man he'd never met before. His voice was soft and sweet with a polite southern accent. I loved him already. "It's nothing," I said. "You had enough to eat?" Yes, he said. "Mama brought me here before dinner to meet you. But when you weren't here, she left me because they told her you'd be in soon, and they couldn't leave me in the bar, so they put me in here and brought me a cheeseburger with french fries, and the waitresses and everyone have been really nice, but I've been here for so long, waiting." "I'm sorry about that," I said, as shame swept across my face and neck. "I really am." "That's okay," he said. "And where is your mother?" "Oh, she's in school, in college. She goes at night. 2 days, I mean, 2 nights a week. I usually stay with home or with Paw at his nursing home, but tonight she brought me here to meet you. She says you're my uncle. I am, I said, with what must have been something akin to pride. My insides pulsed and coursed with warmth. I shook his hand. It felt moist and like a soft shell, the bones fragile. I wanted to protect them and not let go. His eyes bloomed as he sat up. Mama says your name is Caesar. It is. That's so cool. I guess. Can I call you Uncle Caesar? If you'd like. He smiled and so did I. It felt so nice. Why are you crying? He asked. I'm sorry, I said, blotting tears on the shoulders of a fresh white tea. I sniffed and tried to comport myself. Long story, I said. Okay, he said, can you tell me? I sat down next to my nephew and told him all the good things. All the good things I can remember about my beloved brother and his shining prince of a father. And then we just talked for a while. He was a good kid, and I was so happy to meet him. The timing could have been a little bit better. Remember the focaccia one, where I said they were making focaccia and the thing went off and the focaccia came out? Remember that stuff?
Yes.
That was good.
That was good.
This was almost there. Okay, so the pasta's done, right? Remember, I taught you this with the carbonara, right? You don't go drain this and blah, 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 right? Or if you drain it, you just drain it just for a second and get it right into the sauce. The sauce is done. The pasta's not. I'm going to finish. I'm going to finish cooking the pasta, not in the water, but in the sauce, right? So it's absorbing all the sauce right into the noodle. Right? This is one of the secrets that restaurants do, Italians do, and good home cooks do to make their pasta taste different than most pastas that we enjoy in our life. Right? It tastes better. I got some cleaning up to do. Right, so I got all my pasta here. I'm gonna turn this off. Right? I'm gonna grab a little bit of this pasta water. This pasta water down here is no longer just pasta water. It's starchy love, right? It's starchy gold. Right? Right? I'm gonna save it in case my sauce, right, needs a little bit more liquid in it. We'll see how much of the what was that? We'll see how much of the sauce that the pasta absorbs. I'm turning. I would do the fancy flipping thing, but it's going to be a little messy. I'm turning. Okay. Now, real Italian pasta sauces, right, are not just dripping in sauce. Right? The noodle is coated. It's treated with equal respect as the sauce itself. Right? So we're not having an abundance of sauce that buries our noodle. We're making a great cohesion between noodle and sauce. Okay. This is looking good. Little spillage. Turning it. It's cooking. It's cooking. I'm going to use some of that pasta water because I need it. I'll let this keep going. A little more heat. Now I'm going to plate this. So I'm thinking this pasta is now cooked. All the way through, which it is. It tastes like the sauce. If I removed all the sauce somehow, magically, this would taste, the noodle itself would taste like tomatoes and basil and guanciale and onions. That's the secret. You're infusing the noodle with the flavor of the sauce. Am I belaboring this? Okay. Awesome. Good. Take this out. See that? It's not dripping, right? It's just perfect amount of sauce coating it. Just slightly want that, right?
How do we
It's spectacular.
phrase that differently?
What?
I know you want that.
I don't mean that you want
That's so weird.
that. Okay, forgive me.
Also, when you said like half your face was in those films, you said just the bottom half.
I know you want that. No, I know you want that. No, that is
No,
all right.
there's different wording.
I bet you'd appreciate this dish of
There you
pasta. Okay, I'm gonna anoint with a fresh swirl of olive oil. This is my good stuff, not my cooking oil, but my anointing oil. I know you got anointing oil, right? I'm gonna add some cheese from, this is Pecorino Romano cheese, of course. This is a Roman pasta dish. You use Pecorino, right, not Parmigiano, right? And I'm going to finish with some fresh basil, right? Bucatini alla Mattucciana. I wish I could eat this right now. I have one more passage to read you when they make this dish. Allow me to do a little cleanup. I'll be eating that guanciale that fell on the stove too. Don't tell me. Off the heat, so this is going to keep cooking, right? Obviously, this is a restaurant. I wouldn't eat this on the stove, but I can sacrifice a little bucatini. It will still be good. So what I'll do tomorrow, if I don't eat this tonight, if we don't eat all tonight, I will make spaghetti pie out of that. You ever have spaghetti pie? Leftover pasta, right? In the morning, you would just whip up a bunch of eggs, right? Mix them into around the pasta, make it, it's like an omelet, basically. And you cook it on the stovetop, fish in the oven with tons of cheese. It's the best breakfast, right? With carbonara, it's crazy. It's like a bacon, egg, and cheese with carbonara, right? Even with something like this, it works. Any pasta that you bring home, right? It's not going to taste good as pasta anymore, right? Because pasta has to be fresh. But you use your leftovers for spaghetti pie. I have a recipe. Look, Google Andrew Cotto, men's journal, spaghetti pie, and my recipe for that will come up. All right. So I need a sip of martini. I got some work to do here tonight. And our last passage. Okay. And we'll finish right on time.
I have to leave at 7. You have 5 minutes.
I know. We're doing 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Timer. 3, 2, 1, go.
So's gonna love going to the local community college next year.
You want to get rid of me, don't you?
No, I don't. How many times I gotta say this? I don't. Anyways, last passage. So this is the exact continuation of the scene where I ended, right? Where Caesar meets his nephew for the first time. He didn't know he had a nephew, right? His beloved brother, Angie, right? Which explains prior to this scene, got his high school girlfriend pregnant while Caesar had run away. He subsequently died on the train tracks, but she disappeared as well, ended up being pregnant and had a kid. She returns to the inn one night to tell this to Caesar, and then this is the night that she dropped off his nephew when he met him for the first time. They just met, right? He was overwhelmed with emotion for his kid, and here they are. Charlie's mother found us in the kitchen where I was teaching him how to work a saute pan. Being the only kid of a single parent, he had some culinary basics. He could make eggs, and that was great practice for a lot of dishes. He had helped Santi in a few places, that's the chef that plays Santi, including a veal piccata that took a splash of white wine that flashed with sizzle and smoke and made him blurt, "Cool!" Brandy was tired and hungry when she arrived, and so was I. The restaurant had only lingerers by then, so Santi went home. The bar was bumping with Friday night revelers after booze and company. Excuse me. Richie had that covered. With one hand, I put on a pot of water for pasta and coached Charlie through the dicing of pancetta and the slivering of a red onion. His mother cringed as he worked a large knife, but he was careful and a good listener. He sauteed the pancetta over medium heat, rendering out the fat, and then added the onions to caramelize into drippings. I'd him squish with his bare hand whole tomatoes and add them to the pan, along with some torn basil, which he thoughtfully sniffed before dropping. As the sauce gently bubbled, Charlie salted the boiling water and added a pound of thick spaghetti with a hole in the middle. I taught him how to say bucatini, and when the bucatini was 3 minutes shy of al dente, he strained it and dumped the strainer, wet noodles and all, right into the saute pan where it finished cooking in the sauce, absorbing some of the flavor. I asked him not to tell anyone my secret for the most flavorful pasta, a pasta not just coated in sauce, but of the sauce, and he promised he wouldn't tell. I believed him. Using 2 hands, Charlie transferred the pasta and sauce from the massive saute pan to a rounded platter, where he anointed it with fresh olive oil, added some grated pecorino romano cheese, and tossed the contents. Fresh basil was put on top as a garnish. His mother clapped and Charlie beamed as his mother and his uncle enjoyed his creation at a makeshift table around a high wooden workstation in the kitchen. About halfway through our plates, Mike, in uniform, came into the kitchen. He said a quick hi to Brandy, and I introduced him to my nephew, to whom he nodded somewhat coldly. I offered Mike some of the pasta, but he said no. And although he took a long look at my hand, he didn't ask what happened or where I'd been all day. Can I talk to you for a minute? He said in a somewhat officious tone. Go ahead. Alone? I'm having my dinner. It's kind of important. Not more important than my dinner. Charlie made it all by himself. Mike huffed in exasperation, took a breath, and walked out of the kitchen. What was that all about? Brandy asked. Got me, I said, looked at Charlie. Guy clearly doesn't know the magnificence of a perfectly prepared bucatini. Charlie smiled, and I tousled his hair with my good hand. When we were finished, I suggested Charlie show his mother how well he could wash dishes. It's part of kitchen work, I said to him, when he playfully turtled his head. Brandy looked pleased. She also suddenly looked more weary than tired. Everything all right, I asked? Yeah, she said. It's just something at school. What class? English composition. Well, maybe I can help you then, I suggested. I never made it beyond the 9th grade, but I've read more literature than most people I know. Something happened. Live video ended.
On what?
On Instagram.
Why?
I don't know, go check.
Say please.
Please.
Live video ended. Hmm?
Go ahead. I'll finish off my 1 of 2.
I don't like how they can see my double chin. All they can see is me going.
Stop looking at her. At her double chin. No, I'll do 2.
Oh, great.
You good?
Yeah. I don't know why it ended. Maybe there's like a time limit.
Maybe I just got bored of my reading. I'm almost done, guys. Ready? Maybe I can help you tonight, I suggested. I never made it beyond the 9th grade. But I've read more literature than most college graduates, I figure. Not a bad writer either, I said. It was true. The library was the sanctuary in every town or city I stayed. I also fancied myself a pretty good writer, having sent my mother long narrative dispatches from all over America, allowing her to see and taste and hear and feel every city and every town I was in. I was also the son of one of the world's best unknown, rebellious men of poems and letters. No thanks, baby, Brandy said with a little smile. It's not that kind of trouble. Well, what kind of trouble is it then? I asked, feeling protective. Brandy sighed and felt the need to confess. The professors kind of give me a hard time is all. About your work? I asked. About other things, actually. I remembered when one of Mike's big sisters, a real beauty, was at college and her being harassed by a professor to the point of her having to transfer. I also remembered that Mike's father, out of uniform, paid that inappropriate professor a visit. Maybe I should have a word with this professor of yours, I suggested. Brandy looked bewildered and then bemused. What did you just say? I was seeing more of the bewildered at that point, so I repeated my slightly veiled threat, thinking I was being noble. I'm sorry, but are you out of your damn mind, Brandy said, ending any ambiguity in her stance. Charlie stopped washing the dishes and approached us quickly. Everything all right, Mama? He asked. Everything's fine, Charlie, except your uncle here seems to think I'm incapable of handling my own affairs. I didn't say that, I said, even though that's exactly what I said. Brandy's eyes pulsed and her mouth opened as disbelief segued toward anger. The urge to engage in a heated exchange might have come over her, but she took a breath to calm herself and placed her hands slowly on her thighs. She looked around the kitchen and at her son, and she was, I believe, considering how things had improved for them as of late. I must have been mistaken then, she said, a thread of feigned contrition in her voice. You weren't mistaken, I said, and I'm sorry. Brandy Redfern broke out laughing, one of those big, bouncy laughs that actresses use in movies. You hear that, Charlie? She asked, with a whole new look, one of pleasant satisfaction. I did, he answered, nodding with a satisfied smile of his own. Heard what? I asked, feeling suddenly outnumbered and excluded, realizing how much private knowledge they must share. I wanted in. Brandy gave me the jackpot smile of warmth and genuine affection. One of the rules for being a good man is being able to say you're sorry, she said. Isn't that right, Charlie? Right, he said, and went back to the sink to finish the dishes. I wondered what other rules they had about being a good man, and just how many my life would measure up. Just how my life would measure up. I'd have a lot to apologize for, I imagined. Boom. That's it for tonight, y'all. Well, I thank you very much for coming. I want to have a quick conversation with you about wine. Paired with a bucatini, so it's like 20 minutes, so I swear. I know we need to talk about wine too. This is a Chianti Classico Riserva. Chiantis are great wines from Tuscany, right? Not the old ass shit with the fiasco bottle and the wicker casing on it, right? That makes your lips purple. Chianti's gotten great for the end of the last century into this century. Chianti Classicos are the best Chiantis. They have a Gallo Nero, a black rooster on the label, right? They're wonderful for special occasions, for special occasions, right? Chianti Classico Reservas, right? They are aged for 2 years in oak, right? They are spectacular wines that will be great. This is $20, this one, right? I have a Chianti Classico here, right? Which I got, it's a $15 wine. This is the best bargain at my wine store, Greenwood Grape and Still, here at 4th Avenue in Brooklyn, right? It's a Chianti Classico, not a Reserva, but it's a $15 price point for a Chianti Classico. Finally, look, a Cinghiali. We have a Cinghiali, just like for Cucina Tipica's cover, right? And this is my $10 everyday drinking wine. It's not a Chianti Classico or Chianti other region, but it's from Tuscany. It uses Sangiovese grapes, right? It's spectacular, and I'm bringing it out to you tonight because I have news to share with you that I just signed a contract for the sequel to Cucina Tipica, right? It's called Cucina Romana. It comes out on March 21st of 2021. It's so good. Right? I'm not entirely done, but I was done enough for the publisher to say like, okay, this is working, right? So we just signed the contract this week. It comes out in March. I think we are safe to party in March. If we're not safe to party in March, I'm just gonna go out to the ocean and not come back, right? So it's like you promised.
Yeah, really?
No way. So we have a more book news, right? So I will have a book out this year and a book out next year, and I'm only writing these books so I can be more close to you guys. So I hope that we are able to see each other in person for either book or both. But certainly, the Cinghiali is coming back in 2021 with Cucina Romana. It takes place mostly in Rome, and it's really good. So to help me turn this off, I wish you all a great weekend. I'm gonna whip up martini number 2. Hopefully, we'll not end up in the street.
You know what my mom says about martinis?
What'd she say?
They're like boobs. Okay.
I've heard that. We're gonna say goodbye. Take care, everybody. Love you.
Goodbye.
Peace.
Peace, love.